Hello, let's talk about the war in North Africa, or the Afrika campaign, or the Afrika Feldzug in Germany. Let's first talk a little bit about what happened during World War II in North Africa, and then could Germany win the World War II if they put more effort or send more troops to Africa or something like that? And at least was the Africa war or the Africa campaign um, have any use for Germany, or could they do something else, something better with the troops? Um, First, in 1940, Italy declared war against the Allies after Germany break through and capture France. Italy attack France and don't gain any territory, but the normally you hear the Italian troops are humiliated by small French troops, but if you look at the map, there are a lot of mountains, so even if they're a small French troop, they can't really attack and can't really gain much territory. From my opinion, yeah, that's clear. But Italy attacked then the British forces in not in Egypt, because Italy is here and Italy is also here, and if they conquer somehow Egypt, they could connect their colonies and got a big African empire. For example, that was the goal of Mussolini, to make the Mediterranean to an Italy lake. War against Yugoslavia, annexing of Albania, war against Greece, and all these a lot of Italian islands are in the Dogger, not Dogger Bay. That's yeah, that's the goal of Italian. And the Italian troops and France surrender, and they can move some Italian troops from the French border to the British border. Egypt is an independent country, or not in like in Hearts of Iron, just British territory. It's an independent country, but the United Kingdom have rights to put troops there, and if in case of war, yes, they have the right to be there and put forces there. Italy invades. Just if you look at this map, just this area here, um, and then wasn't stopped by the British. They move a big force in this area, and they have just not enough supplies to go any further. And this is the British supply base in this city, and the British retreat to their supply base and wait for the Italians, but the Italians never came. And then the British start some attacking, some harassment of the Italians, and then they start a counterattack against the Italians, the Operation Koprs, and cut all Italian forces off. The one problem for the Italian forces was they have too small anti-tank guns, but that's problem. For example, they can't fight or destroy the Matilda tanks. That's the same problem that the Germans have. So not really something to blame on the Italians. In the French campaign, there was one counterattack from Matilda tanks, and the Germans can't do anything. And the Matilda tanks drive over the anti-tank guns and routed an SS unit. SS unit run away. And similar here, they invaded and they take the Cyrenaica, this area. And then the Germans are a little bit feared, because if Italian use Ethiopia, Italy could make a peace deal with the Allies, or quit the war, or change sides or something. And that's the reason why they sent Panzerschwerverband was the first title. Something like tank blocking force, purely defensive unit, was the first troops from the Afrika Korps who sent it to Libya. Then the British forces retreat their troops because they don't expect a counterattack, and they send them to Greece or send them to reinforcement or to training or something, do something else, because the Germans, and that's one specialty about Rommel. Before all his troops are embarked from the ships, he started a counterattack, and he come Tobruk. He come to Tobruk. I don't know why this is mountains in Hearts of Iron, because mountains, in my opinion, are about higher than, for example, 1,000 meters or 3,000 foot. If I see for example, I live here in this area in Germany, and we have high mountains here, but not like this. And here in this area are not the mountains are not this high. But I think for game purposes, I want to show this some heavy terrain in this area. Rommel started a counterattack. He reached Tobruk. He lay siege on Tobruk, but he can't take it. And then the next British counterattack came, the Operation Crusader. And then Rommel must retreat from Tobruk. And next year he starts a second counterattack, and then he can capture Tobruk very fast and move to El Alamein. There were the two major battles of El Alamein. One in the Germans attack and can make a breakthrough, because the south is very there's a cliff. You see it in the map, and you can't move just around it, for example, then, because that's was the reason why they can stop it. And early, the British must first learn to fight in the desert, or not in the desert, but learn this tank warfare. And at that point, they have much superiority in gain much experience and have superiority in tanks and air force and manpower. They get the first German tanks. Yes, German tanks is not the famous tanks, but in my opinion, it's one of the best tanks in World War II. It's a reliable tank. A lot of tanks broke down in the desert. It's a really bad terrain for vehicles. And have a reliable tank is, for example, in this terrain very useful. And then the Germans lost the second battle of El Alamein, and the German Afrika runs away. Some Italian divisions have no motorized, no trucks, and they can't run very fast enough. And then the most, in my opinion, then the Afrika Feldzug is over, but that's wrong, because that is around about 1948, 1942, 1943, same time the Battle of Stalingrad happened. Just to all forces who were committed here could be committed in Stalingrad, for example, just to have an idea. And then the Germans retreated to Tunisia. And the same, a little bit later, after the second battle of El Alamein, the Allied invaded the Americans in Casablanca, and the British in Algiers and Rouen. A little bit resistance from the French, from the Vichy French, but not much. And then they try to capture North Africa and attack the Afrika Korps for the German and Italians on both sides. In my opinion, I don't understand why Montgomery attacked anyway here, if he knows the Allied forces tried to come from the stabbed Germany in the back, come from the, why he attack anyway? Just let them sit here and wait until the other forces came. But yes, The Afrika Korps is already on the run if the other forces came. Then they, at the end, the Afrika Korps, or Germans and Italian forces, just are in Tunisia. This area is the old French defense line which they use to defend, and they defend Africa, this Tunisia area. I think don't a few months, and that's not one of the first battles where the Tiger tank is used in this area against unexperienced U.S. forces. And that's the first bazooka was used. The Germans captured it and developed the Panzerschreck out of it. And in the end, suggesting in the English Wikipedia are figures for tank losses, but the total losses are only the German Wikipedia. 362,000 Italians are dead, missing, or captured. 151,000 Germans are lost. And 220,000 British and 18,000 American soldiers are lost. And equipment losses. 70,000 trucks are lost, and that's the tanks not that important, because if you remember, if you know the Germany, if they invaded the Soviet Union, they have around about 600,000 trucks, so more than 10% of the trucks are lost in North Africa. And even though the problem in Barbarossa was always the supply situation in the early months, or especially in the Battle of Stalingrad, even before the encirclement, these trucks could be useful otherwise. So, that's the idea what happened in North Africa. Could Germany win if they do something else or send more troops to North Africa? Probably not, because even if they can't send more troops to North Africa, that's the first problem, because they can't supply the 2 divisions they sent anyway. So send more divisions and not solve the problem, because they can't supply them. Just simple like that. Even if they if they could somehow conquer Alexandria, the supply route is just much longer. So can't supply anything there, and the route across the Mediterranean is longer, so they would have suffered more shipping losses. And the important thing, what everyone even ignore, the British, if the war started just to this year, they don't move across the Mediterranean or not with all convoys, all to travel, go, even if the war starts around Africa. Only heavy armed convoys, for example, from Malta or Alexandria, escorted by aircraft carrier and battleships, go across the Mediterranean. If Italy quit the war, the England gain much shipping space, because they can then use the safe route, but not so long Italy is a combatant in the war. So that's argument. If they lose the Suez Canal, they lose their connection, or have they anyway use the longer road. So that's don't change anything. Next idea, they could capture the oil in Iraq. They can't supply an army from this range, or from, it depends. They can't supply an army here. How you ever can supply an army here? I don't know. And the second problem in Hearts of Iron is simple. The oil you can use, you don't need to, there are no refineries you need for oil. If they capture oil in this area, they must move the oil to Germany and make fuel out of it. So that's impossible. They don't have any tankers. The railway capacity between Germany and Italy is a problem even at that point, so they can't ship much trains full of crude oil to Germany to make fuel out of it. It's impossible to take. They can't use it, even if they take it. It would be a blow for the British if they lose their oil. But the US have more than enough oil. Would be a problem, but don't kill them. Move from the Middle East to the Caucasus, they can't supply an army will be about impossible. They have no possibilities to supply an army there. They have 70,000 trucks or more used now and can't supply the army. How many more trucks? Germany have no more, don't have more trucks. So it's impossible. It's the only. I had a bigger more of this video is how can Germany win the World War II on my German channel. The only possibility at 1940 and 1941 is before the Soviet Union, before Barbarossa, is that British somehow say we just quit. If Britain don't quit, for example, it could be be a moral disaster, and Churchill must leave his office or something like that. As this could happen, but that's the only reason how Germany win. They can't invade Britain. They can't force them to surrender if Britain don't want. So even this idea, it's just it's not possible. Even if they win all fights in North Africa, it's they run out of supply, and they can't really force the British to peace. The second, and then they use a lot of planes. They lose a lot of planes. Use a lot of planes. You use a lot of transport planes. The Battle of El Alamein is a similar time that the Battle of Stalingrad happened, and in my opinion, the Germans could conquer the city if they have not much more supplies and not much more troops there. But even if they conquer the city, the Soviets could start a counterattack anyway. But 2 divisions more, some 1,000 lorries more, they could, for example, hold Makeup here, and all the campaign in 1942 was not about Stalingrad. Stalingrad was a minor objective, not even mentioned in the first planes. The goal of this campaign was the oil, and not the Caucasus. That was too far anyway, but the oil in this area. And if Germany could hold the oil in 1942, that could be change the war, because after they lose the oil, Germany have no can't do what the Germans do, the Bewegungskrieg. Without oil you can't move. That's even in the German doctrines in this game, they call it mobile warfare. War of movement was always the Germans' way of war. For example, even in the German French war, even before there was a Germany, they tried to be faster than the enemy, encircle the enemy, or the Schlieffenplan in the First World War tried to move across Belgium and to surround the enemy, move faster. That's always the Germany always can't fight long wars. They must do fast, decisive action to win a war, and they can't do it in the 20th century without oil. And that's why this oil is important, and they find something for some sand in the desert, and the moment they lose the oil in the war in the Soviet Union. So in my opinion, if another commander or another general commanded the Afrika Korps and just kick the British out of Libya or just send some, just defend after in 1941 would be much more useful for the Germans than what Rommel did. Of course, the British could send some more Lend-Lease tanks to the Soviet Union or something like that, but I think that would don't change much. So, if you like it, just please subscribe or like it, or if you don't like it, make a comment. Bye bye.